What if a Korean entertainment YouTuber or reactor swaps his microphone for flip-flops and dives face first into a whole new kind of chaos? Well, stay tuned to find out. Roll my intro.
I love it when you do it like that. When you walk out wearing nothing but. I love it when we do it like that. You know that I'm right there, want you to. You make it look so easy like that. Then you try out my attention like.
Ajeossi On. Welcome back to Daebak Reacts TV, your one-stop shop for all things beats, bars, and of course, big Daebak energy. I'm back in the studio, and this time I have something very special lined up for all of you. But before I get to that, I just want to throw a big shout out to the creators of Meld Studio, one of the most efficient and easy to use pieces of software similar to OBS, but in my opinion better, that's out there. And I'm actually using Meld Studio right now to record this video. I gotta say, it is an incredible improvement from OBS. Now don't get me wrong, I've been using OBS for all of the previous videos that I did. And even before I started this YouTube channel, I've been using OBS. And I do know how it works, but I gotta say, OBS requires skill and understanding. Meld Studio, on the other hand, is intuitive and incredibly easy to use. Now, part of the credit goes to Senpai Gaming. And I saw a video from Senpai Gaming documenting some of the features of Meld Studio. And it also features plugins that he created, Senpai Gaming created, for Meld Studio. So for those of you who want to watch that video, I'm going to put a link in the description for you to go check out. And be sure to mention that Domino sent you over. Okay? Or Daebak Reacts TV sent you over. Whatever works for you. And yeah, so big shout out to Senpai Gaming and the creators of Meld Studio. Fantastic work. Let's get back to the video. So, I decided I wanted to do a mini-series documenting my travel through Asia, namely 2 countries. One, India, the second being Indonesia. And I'm going to divide it. So, it's going to be bite-sized, easy to digest, and incredibly fun. So, you're not going to get bored whatsoever. It's going to be jam-packed with stories, hilarious stories, interesting stories, and life-changing stories as well. If you're ready to get on this journey with me, your host Domino from Daebak Reacts TV, let's get into that opener that I decided upon. All right. So, are you ready? Let's do it. Do it with me. All right. 지금부터 showtime. So our journey started in Toronto, and we decided to use British Airways, which was actually surprisingly quite affordable. But I wanted to start here because there's an interesting story. So when I arrived at the check-in counter in Toronto to check in my baggage, I built some rapport with the agent or the employee at the check-in counter, and using my persuasion skills, which I shall not reveal, I managed to get myself an upgrade, or at least what I thought was an upgrade. No, we're going to get to that in a second. So I agreed to take on an upgrade, and I was super excited. As soon as I got that upgrade, I was already dancing in my head. I was dancing Gangnam Style. And I was super stoked. So the flight was in the evening, if I remember correctly. So we get on board, and I got to talk about the seating. So the way the seating arrangement is on British Airways, as particularly this flight, it's a bit unique. All right, it's a bit unique. Now you have your typical middle row, which is aisle to aisle seating. It's a 4-seater, so you have 4 seats in the middle, and then you have your means of egress, right, which passengers and the cabin attendants use to offer in-flight service, right? And then on either side of that, you have your window seating. Now, the middle row is average sized, meaning an average person can easily fit into those seats. No problem. However, the window seating is a lot smaller. Now, this is where the problem happens, or happened in my case. Now, get this. I signed up for an upgrade. Little did I know, my seat in particular was next to the exit. Of course, I was briefed prior to that I would be sitting near the exit, which offers considerably more legroom than the average economy seat, right? One would think. But little did I know, the width of the seat was actually twice as small as the average window seat. So you can imagine how small it is. So this Ajeossi, me being this big Ajeossi, or this big framed Ajeossi, trying to fit into that small seat, oh boy, you know disaster is about to strike. And it did. I tried so hard to fit into that seat. I had to go through so much just to be able to fit into that damn seat. But I managed to. But that wasn't the end of it, because now I'm smushed against the hull of the flight, the hull of the plane. I'm like this. Literally like this. On top of that, the cherry on the cake was the flight was incredibly turbulent. Now, fun fact about this Ajeossi. I don't know if it's a fun fact, a scary fact about this Ajeossi. Well, not really scary, but it's interesting to note that turbulence and I don't get along. All right? Turbulence and this Ajeossi are on opposite sides of the spectrum. This flight was incredibly turbulent. So I was probably the only Ajeossi on board with my arms on either side of my seat, clutching the armrests for dear life as the flight traveled through bad weather conditions. Like this, literally. I didn't catch a wink of shut-eye. I was a zombie by the time I landed at Heathrow, which was a stopover right before I took the next flight to India. By the time I got to Heathrow, me and my travel companion, we were already winded. And I thought, okay, a 4-hour layover is okay for us to kind of just let loose a little bit and relax before the next flight, which was going to be just as long as the flight prior, right? I wasn't looking forward to the next flight. But fortune was in my favor, and I managed to get the middle row, a seat in the middle row. So that flight wasn't as bad. Anyway, we get to India. That's where the real journey begins. We arrived in Chennai, a city in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, India, where we landed early in the morning, just in time to be greeted by a hazy sunrise, the smell of street-side chai, and the unrelenting symphony of honking horns that never truly stops. Now, this is a thing in India. If you're traveling, this is something you have to get used to. Now, the honking isn't just redundant honking. I believe, this is what I believe, and what I've come to understand over the course of the journey that I had, was that the honking is considered as a navigational tool to signal the other drivers of the other vehicles that you're there and to pay attention, because that's exactly how driving is in India. There's no lane system. There's no lane system. You essentially create your own pathway. And you're pretty much navigating the streets like Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon. All right. Star Wars reference for those of you who don't know. Okay. Old school Star Wars fan here. So yeah, if you're Han Solo, you're going to do just fine. Okay. So let's talk about the air. I got to say, the air quality was subpar. There's a reason for that. Okay, the air was thick and warm because it was, it's forever summer there, right? It's a tropical state, so there's no winter, essentially. It's just always warm and hot, right? So the air was thick, and I gotta say it was polluted because of the emissions, right? From the vehicles, from the factories and whatnot. But the cool thing about that was it carried the scent of a city that was alive. And I loved it. Despite the pollution, I kind of enjoyed it. I don't know. Am I the only Ajeossi that actually enjoys the smell of gasoline? I'm not sure. The other thing that caught my attention were these 3-wheeled vehicles called auto rickshaws, aka tuk-tuks or tuk-tuks, right? Well, that's what they're called in Thailand, but in India they're called auto rickshaws. Again, Han Solo navigational skills, right? They were weaving through traffic, and it was incredible to watch them. And a lot of these guys, they know what they're doing. I'm not being misogynistic. The majority of the auto rickshaw drivers or riders, they were all male. Okay? So that was one thing that caught my attention. The second thing that caught my attention were the cows. And you would see cows, I could see cows just casually strolling down the road like they own the place. And I'm not even kidding you. Traffic comes to a standstill if these cows are crossing the road. And there's a reason for that. There's a religious reason for that. So in Hindu culture and tradition, cows are considered holy. So by trying to cut across a herd, that's considered disrespectful. So traffic actually comes to a standstill. So that's an extra 15 or 20 minutes out of your schedule just to wait for these cows to cross the road, right? And moving forward, the other thing that was a culture shock to me was the fact that you could actually pay for your Uber with cash. Yeah, I'm not kidding you when I say this. So there are a lot of rider apps in India, namely in Chennai. And Uber is not the only app that you can use to get a ride, right? You could use, there's a whole lot of them. And I don't remember all of them. I remember a few of them. So there was Red Taxi, there was Ola, there was Rapido. And I believe I used Rapido a lot because it was just so convenient, right? You could even call an auto rickshaw as a ride. I'm not even joking. It's that convenient, right? And auto rickshaws are budget friendly. You don't have to break the bank for that, right? So the cool feature that I really discovered and I thought was kind of a culture shock was the fact that you could pay for your Uber in cash, unlike the West, where you have to set up a payment system or payment method prior to calling for your ride, right? And so you could even include your tips with the cash that you have. So you don't even have to select and go through the whole rigmarole of selecting how much you would like to tip the guy or the person, right? And I found that to be very convenient. That was incredible. But the real shocker of all of this was the payment system. Now, we all know what Apple Pay is, right? Apple Pay, you basically load your card onto your iPhone and you could use that to just tap at any receptor device, right? To make a payment. In India, on the other hand, they take this to a whole other level. So like Uber and the rider apps that you have, they have a variety of services that you could use to pay for whatever service you're using. And it's not limited to just regular services. You could use it for pretty much any form of payment. So they have Google Pay or GPay. They have Paytm. They have PhonePe. And all of these apps are linked directly to a bank in India that you're banking with. So goodbye to cards. You don't need a card. Really, you don't need a bank card. All you need is a phone, and that's it. That's all you need. A phone and a bank or a bank account. That's it. If you've got a bank account, you got your phone on hand, your life is done. You can go around the city or even the entire country with just that. Right? You don't even need a wallet. You just have GPay on your phone. You can actually customize the payments. You could use it for whatever transaction that's happening in your life, and you're set. And I found that to be incredibly efficient. I mean, the infrastructure there is amazing. I can make a separate video about that, and it'll probably take up the entire video. So I don't want to get into that in too much detail, but just to give you an idea, you really don't need to use your wallet if, this is the only condition, if you've got a bank account in India. All right, that's a big if. So really, it works for the citizens and the overseas citizens that have bank accounts in India. But if you don't, then you got to stick to your traditional methods of payment. But you're not entirely left out, because if you have cash, you could pretty much get around with cash anywhere in India. All right. So that was something interesting. Now let's move on to food. Let's talk about food for a second. So moving from analog freedom to food. Food is a big, big thing in India. Okay, if you're a foodie, you're gonna have the time of your freaking life in India. The number of food options is incredible. Okay, so a couple of things that I tried that I wanted to really, really try out. One was the infamous Hyderabadi Biryani. Now, if you don't know what biryani is basically a rice dish. So think rice mixed with spices and meat. Okay? And you've got choices. You got options. The option of mutton and chicken. So, and both are good. Both are incredibly delicious, by the way. It's just kind of gives you a different flavor. All right? But I got to say this. Listen, I like spicy food. I've survived Korean bulldog noodles. I've survived tteokbokki challenges. You know, when you go to a Korean restaurant and right next to the tteokbokki, there's levels that you can choose. Yeah, I've tried the very high levels, okay? And I survived. So you name it, I've tried it. But I wasn't ready for this. This biryani, it humbled me. It activated a chakra inside of me that I didn't know I had. And it promptly shut it down too. let's just say it stayed with me for days in more ways than you know. Oh my God. I was like Lode Runner heading to the washroom every now and then. Oh my God. All right. Well, there were these beautiful moments, these little moments that I cherished, right? So, for example, there was one where I was watching. Now, this is the other really interesting, I wouldn't call it a dish, it's a drink. Madras coffee. Now, you might be thinking, Domino, Ajeossi, it's just coffee. No, not just coffee, my friends. I'm talking specifically about Madras coffee. This is different. First of all, they filter it differently. And second, there's an entire process of actually pouring it into your cup. So what they do is they give you, it's a 2-set. So the drink comes in a 2-set steel container thingamajig. Okay, for lack of a better word and how to describe it, it's basically a 2-set. So there's a mug and there's this kind of bowl that they give you, right? So the mug sits inside this bowl. Now, when I first got it, I was like, wait a second, what does this bowl do? What is it supposed to do? Well, upon seeing how it's actually delivered or served, makes sense now. So what they do is, so the cup contains this incredibly hot, steaming hot coffee, right? So what one would do is one would actually pour it into this bowl and then re-pour it back into the cup in order to cool it. Yeah. Now, it's not just a regular pour. This is where it gets interesting. You ever see those videos of Indian tea stalls or chai stalls, as they say, where the guy's kind of like pouring from dizzying heights? That's exactly what they do with the coffee too. And I learned I learned firsthand how to do it. I became an expert at it. So I can actually pour this Madras coffee from probably yay high. I could keep going. And it's so much fun to do. It just makes the whole experience so much more fun and interesting and delightful, right? So I really enjoyed this moment where I had this coffee and I was pouring it to cool it down, and it was a small. It's these little joys of life that you cherish, right? So that. And the dosas, let's talk about the dosas. Now, if you don't know what dosas are or what a dosa is, it's a traditional South Indian dish, okay? And it's, I think, pancakes. These are thin, crispy pancakes made from a type of batter, right? That is pre-made, overnight, left to ferment a little bit, and then used in the morning. So now, you might be wondering, is this a type of breakfast? Yes, it is. It's a type of breakfast, right? So dosas are served during breakfast, usually, typically. And now these things can be as large as a surfboard. I'm not even kidding you, that these can be that big, right? I've seen huge dosas, crispy rolled dosas served on these plates. And you might be thinking that's a lot. No, it's actually, these are thin. I'm talking like paper thin, crispy pancakes. So you can just like break off chunks and dip into this thing called chutney. It's like a sauce, right? And these chutneys come in an assortment of flavors. Like you have chutneys that are made from tomatoes. You've got chutneys that are made from, what was the other? This leaf, not mint. Yeah, mint leaves, right? So there's mint chutneys, there's tomato chutneys, there's coconut chutneys. You got a whole lot of them, and they're all delicious, right? Super, super indulgent. So, yeah, so these are some of the traditional food items that you could possibly try when you go to Chennai. The biryanis, the dosas. There's other stuff too, and I'm going to list a few of them in the description so you can actually take a look for yourself and Google it if you have to. Moving on, it was time for Bali. And this is where I'll be ending this episode because there's a lot to cover in Bali and you won't want to miss it. So make sure to stick around. Subscribe if you haven't. And if you consider making this channel your go-to for Daebak content, don't forget to smash that like button, turn your notifications on, stay updated. This is your host, Domino, and I'll see you in my next episode. Cheers and peace.